one. Hey, how's everybody doing today? Welcome back for the next episode of Coffee Talk with Brohawk. And I am here today with Greg Pollock, uh, CSD. And Greg, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to be with me. Um, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And as you may see, this is not my typical coffee talk recording because we have an ASL interpreter with us, and so this is really about CSD's mission and vision and how they create experiences for this community. So with that, Greg, tell us a little bit about yourself and what are you up to these days?
Great. Thank you so much for having me here, Mark. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here today. So, I am Greg Pollock. I am vice president of an organization called Communication Services for the Deaf. And I will let you know that I am a big backpacker and hiker. I really enjoy the outdoors. I'm
Excellent.
also a moonlight workaholic. And so when you talk a little bit about what CSD is, if you know what a TTY is, then you have been touched at some point by CSD.
Okay.
We have been involved in the telecommunication industry for 50 years now. Also, we have been into the accessibility, access and customer service for people with disabilities. Before CSD was established in 1975, deaf and hard of hearing people needed to rely on their parents, siblings, friends to make phone calls for them. In 1975, a guy in South Dakota made up the idea of having an electronic typewriter that would be able to make calls to communicate with people, point to point. And this was the first time that deaf people could make calls on their own. The problem, though, is to communicate with somebody, the other person that they wanted to call also had to have a TTY. And so to solve that problem, this guy in South Dakota got a grant from the state of South Dakota to hire a bunch of hearing people to sit in front of a keyboard and wait for a deaf person that wanted to make a call. And those hearing people would then receive that call. They would make the call to the people that they're wanting to talk. They would speak what was typed and type back what was spoken. And that's how Relay was started. Now, fast forward to 1990, when the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, was signed into law. The Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, came up to CSD and said, hey, that South Dakota service that you've got going on, we'd like to make that nationwide. So over the next 10 years, CSD started to set up relay call centers throughout the United States, hiring thousands and thousands of employees to make calls from deaf people to hearing people. And it became the access, whether it was an organization, a company, a brand, a family member calling grandma in order to communicate with them.
Excellent.
In the early 2000s, webcams became an emerging technology. And to capitalize on that wave of CSD partnered with Sprint in order to build that first relay service program through video. The model of the program was very similar to that of the TTY. However, instead of the person typing on a keyboard, you had someone like Sharon, our interpreter here, who would sit in front of a computer, would get a call from a deaf person, sign to them into that video call, and then speak to whomever they were trying to call. And that became the ability for deaf people to call in American Sign Language through the interpreter. This was the standard way of communicating for 2 decades. And for anyone that thinks, Yeah. Deaf and hard of hearing people, they're just a small volume. I'm here to share with you that the FCC, the Federal Communication Commission, spends about $101 million a month on calls made by relay
Wow.
service customers, excuse me. And so eventually CSD realized we could get rid of this third party, the interpreter for these conversations, and remove the captioning or the typing from the communication by just encouraging businesses and government agencies to hire deaf people directly in their call centers to answer calls from deaf people. Push 1 for English, push 2 for Spanish, push 3 for ASL. I mean, seriously, you could just push 3 for ASL. Why not? You have other languages. ASL is one of the most widely used language in the world. So from that, direct video calling was born. We started this about 4 years ago,
Mhm.
and it's going to be the next standard in communication access for deaf and hard of hearing people needing to make phone calls. The ADA, when it was signed into law, Congress already knew that they wanted to have the most efficient means of communication possible without that third party communicator in the middle. But in 1975, we didn't really have a lot of other options. So we were stuck with the model that worked at the time. So they included language that said, to the extent possible, the most efficient manner of communication. And that's what direct video calling is, or DVC. And that's basically what CSD has done for the last 50 years. So we have been trying to pioneer accessibility in customer contact centers for different organizations and government agencies.
That is an amazing history and story, and really helping our viewers get a lay of the land as far as why this language option, it needs to be available for the deaf and hard of hearing community. Um, and I imagine from a security standpoint that this, not having to go through a third party relay process, you can actually speak to someone that can solve the problems for you in ASL. Creates even more improved security for the customers that y'all are serving. Is that accurate?
Yes, definitely. Absolutely. When we use relay service, we are relying on a third party to help
Mhm.
us to facilitate the communication. So when I call the IRS, or when I call the Social Security Administration, or I call my bank for that matter, I have to use someone that does not work for Social Security, the IRS, or my bank in order to communicate with them. And so these interpreters are not trained in those areas. They're first come, first serve assigned to me. I've never met them. I've never gone out and had coffee with them, kind of like what we are right now. You know, at least giving me the luxury of getting to know who I am before I give you my social security number and all of my tax information. And so, yeah, having that equitable experience, most hearing callers have that, but it's a huge pain point for the deaf and hard of hearing community. Yes.
Yeah, that is awesome. So, Greg, what attracted you to start your career with CSD?
That's an awesome question. Yeah. It really wasn't on my radar. I spent about 11 years in corporate America. I used to work for the Dow Chemical Company, and then I worked for PNC Bank Financial Services. Both of those were Fortune 500 companies, and it was a phenomenal journey. And I'm very grateful for those opportunities that I had. I spent a lot of time working on public affairs, government relations, compliance, human resource. And I was a small cog in a giant machine. The In the grand scheme of things, my impact that I had was significant in the roles that I had, in the roles that I had held. And but I believed that I could do more. I wanted to have a larger impact than the roles that I was currently functioning in. So when I joined CSD, I did it because, they had a simple concept, a simple idea. This was something that I could do to change the telecommunication industry and save millions of dollars in the telecommunication industry while also changing the world. So, at an economic level, at a legislative level, in a marketplace, and just creating that truly equitable experience with the tens of millions of Americans today who don't have access to a positive, efficient experience with all of the different brands and agencies that are serving them.
Yes.
You know, I looked at that story and realized I wanted to be a part of that. So here I am.
That is awesome. I love the fact that this journey is chosen for mission and purpose as opposed to dollars and cents. So definitely applaud you for that. Um, so what are the advantages an organization, you kind of touched on this a little bit. What are some of the advantages organizations gain by partnering with CSD?
That's another great question. I think the advantages themselves are vast. I'll start by saying, as I had mentioned before, we've always been ahead of the game since 1975.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite thing is to brag about this is that deaf and hard of hearing people have been using text messaging since the 1970s. I guarantee you, Mark, that none of your viewers have been texting since the 1970s.
I would agree with you on
Probably
that.
it probably wasn't until the early 2000s that someone was like, "Hey, texting, we can integrate that into our cell phones." We were using FaceTime and webcams before it was cool.
Mhm.
I genuinely believe that deaf and hard of hearing people are holding the keys for the future of customer service and positive customer experience. We've been holding these keys and we are still the gatekeepers of all of this information. CSD already had the video queue technology. We already had the video-based IVR system. Callers could reach out to our IVR through a phone number or through a web widget. We already had that, and we saw that in order to reach out to CSD's representatives. But it wasn't integrated into customer service call centers yet. We can help companies and agencies achieve communication access and equity with just a blink of the eye. And CSD is one of only 3 organizations right now that are authorized by the FCC to access what is called the ITRS database. The ITRS database, you might be wondering what that is. So I'm a deaf person. I have a social security number. I have a phone number. The FCC has a list of a database of people like me, and people like me rely on an interpreter to make a call or some sort of relay service to make a call. And CSD is authorized as a provider to have access to this database so we can identify or flag a deaf of hard of hearing caller so that calls made by that phone number is routed to our signing representatives and our deaf representatives so that they can have direct communication without that third party. And it's kind of funny, Mark, because you think about, people are like, oh, we don't really have the volume. We don't have a lot of deaf and hard of hearing people that call our customer service. Truth
Hmm.
is, they don't really know. Of course, you don't know because you're not allowed to know that. But
Yes.
the FCC has that data. A company might not be tracking that information, though. And as I had said earlier, the volume is definitely there. The FCC is spending over $100 million a year, a month, excuse me, translating those calls. People have water bills to pay. People have doctors that they have to call and make appointments for. People's need to get their Social Security checks taken care of and answer questions. And CSD is in a great position to help and to acknowledge that because there's so much data available on these target audiences, and these brands just need to get on board with being able to do that. you know, People are calling through third-party interpreters or through captionists through Relay, and their call handle times are escalated. It's probably 30% longer to go through a third party because you're relying on somebody else to facilitate that communication.
Hmm.
Organizations that lean on direct video calling, direct calling, could reduce the call handle time 33 to 40% just by getting rid of that third party person.
And it creates a more seamless customer interaction uh, between your customer and the brand, and shows the customer that you really care and respect them. Yeah,
Absolutely.
excellent, excellent. So, where are you seeing with if maybe clients that you may be looking at, or clients that you may be working with or have worked with over the years, um, where are you seeing organizations miss the mark, so to speak, as it relates to creating this inclusive workplace?
I think organizations themselves tend to be satisfied with by saying, oh, well, we're ADA compliant.
Hmm.
Well, they believe that what they're providing is within compliance of the ADA. We have TRS relay service and we have a TTY number,
Hmm.
but they're really not compliant. All that means is that they have to receive the call from the deaf and hard of hearing people. That's what the FCC says they have to do, is they have to accept the calls. But the ADA mentioned, to the extent possible, the most effective method of communication. And so that's how it's written in the law, but instead it just becomes complacent. Okay, well, we're doing it because they're following what was available in 1975. They haven't really thought much about how technology has improved, how you can create a more positive experience, such as the IVR technology hasn't really changed much, since it was first established. I think there is a level of complacency because they don't see the problem, therefore they don't know the problem is there, and therefore they don't want to find a solution for the problem. I think everyone tends to get stuck on the numbers. What are the numbers telling us? And oftentimes, companies want to see that ROI. They want to know, what is that ROI before I make an investment in something like this? And that's a little silly if you think about it. When a company invests in a web developer, do
Hmm.
they want the ROI the moment that they invest in it, the next day? Of course not. When you invest in headcount, when you invest in people, the ROI comes with the value, and it comes over time. And it's the value of that commitment. You know, Accessibility is no different. You need to invest in the accessibility. You need to experience that in order to attract people. People will come when there is accessibility. Deaf and hard of hearing people have there's about 11 million of us, and we have friends and we have family. we have siblings, and we will create that ripple effect. And it does create a ripple effect. So I think oftentimes companies are thinking about, well, we're meeting the legal requirements. These are the parameters, and we are in compliance. But they're not thinking about the authentic experience that they're actually missing out on.
Mm. And CX has been all the big talking points for 10 plus years. Um, and if you're missing out on a group of 11 million consumers, who have another 11 million or 22 million or 44 million friends, on top of that, it can create a reputational risk for organizations. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I would add also is when people are designing an experience, they're not thinking about including people with disabilities or deaf and hard of hearing people. Include those people into that customer experience conversation. People design an experience with themselves in mind or their
Mhm.
own experiences in mind. So their background, when they design something, they then want to make their design apply to everyone else and make that a universal design, but they're not including everyone, therefore it's not.
Great point. Great point. Um, so today, what are some of the challenges employees with disabilities, or what I guess you could say different abilities, um, face today versus what you saw early on in your career?
Well, I would say one of the most consistent challenges for people with disabilities is the world was not designed with people with disabilities in mind. To that point, the hottest topic right now is AI. A lot of the big tech companies are saying this is the next big thing. This is the next step, especially for the deaf and hard of hearing. And I'm not saying AI is not amazing. It is so creative. And it's incredible. It's a wonderful innovation solution. And but to say that this is an accessibility solution or an accessibility tool, it's a flaw because it's not bidirectional. And what I mean by that is AI only works if the data is fed into the machine. And then the
Mhm.
AI can utilize that to create an outcome. AI is typically fed by hearing people, whether through speech, through text, through speaking. The output then goes to a deaf person. But a deaf person can't sign back to the AI to have a bidirectional communication. AI can't interpret what I'm signing to them. Maybe in 5 or 10 years, sure, but we're not quite there yet. We're not ready to have people sign into AI and have that translate back into speech or text. And that's what happens when you forget to include the user experience in the process. They'll say, oh, yes, it's accessible. Not so much. Deaf, a deaf person still has to navigate how to communicate back to the person who's utilizing the AI with them. IVR is the equivalent. IVR was not designed for deaf and hard of hearing people in mind. That model of IVR, as I had mentioned, has not changed yet. So call centers and their IVRs that were designed for people who can hear, and they rely on vocal commands, and they rely on other prompts and auditory confirmations. And sometimes the code and the number, I'm calling you with this code. You need to be able to then put this code in. Well, that means I need to be able to receive a call to get the code. So when deaf and hard of hearing people try to reach out to these different brands that are not accessible to them, or even federal agencies to share their frustrations, there's challenges. And the response is one of two things. Oh, well, we're ADA compliant. Hmm, not really true. Or use the relay service. Or actually, there's a third option we get sometimes is come to the store, where you
Mhm.
physically have to go and walk into a store and communicate with a person face to face. None of those are truly equitable experiences because with relay service, you have to create that cushion between the organization itself and the customer with that third party interpreter in the middle. And so that kind of controls the situation. And because of relay services and that cushion, the customer is really removed from the organization that they're trying to serve. And the organization has no visibility, or there's a negative experience to the tools because, when you click on utilizing an intermediary, the intermediary is not going to admit that they're making that negative experience until it's too late. So by the time the deaf person gets frustrated enough, there becomes litigation issues, and that becomes the only option for a deaf customer. But the company has no visibility on that. Often they're like, oh, okay. They didn't realize how serious it was. I think organizations could change the paradigm and reframe this simply by, asking companies like CSD or other deaf-owned, deaf-led businesses to help them to understand what that customer experience is and how to get them on the map for that ASL customer experience for the deaf and hard of hearing community.
That that is awesome, and so spot on, in my opinion, as far as some of the experiences like what you were sharing. If a brand tells you, yeah, just come on into the store, there's no guarantee that you're going to have an ASL, um, someone who can speak ASL. Um, in the store. So you just continue to run into the same problems um, that that you would as if you stayed at home and didn't have to waste the gas.
Life, Mark, story of my life.
Yeah.
you know, I'm damned if I do and damned if I don't. And
Uh-huh.
that's sometimes why an ideal world for me is just don't talk to me.
Um,
If I'm traveling and I'm traveling to another place, I drive to the airport, I park my car, I check my bags, I go through TSA, I find the gate, I get on the plane, I get to where I'm wanting to go, I call Uber. It's great. My disability only shows up when somebody tries to talk to me. There's no other time that anybody sees my disability. I kind of like my life better when someone doesn't try to engage with me and doesn't try to talk with me because they're the ones that are giving me that negative experience.
I that is a great perspective. That is a great perspective. Uh, so we've reached the part of our show here, what I call the speed round. Are you ready for the speed round?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right. So you've had a very successful career. You shared, some of the companies that you worked with in the past, worked for in the past. I'm particularly interested in learning your thoughts about this. So at this stage in my career, I wish I can go back and tell my younger self blank. And how would that have helped you navigate your career progression or your career journey up to this point?
I think I wish I had stayed closer to the smarter people in my life. When I was younger and I was growing up, I was focusing on my friends, what I liked, having positive relationships with everyone. And I became too saturated with people. if I would have spent more time with smart people who were intellectually stimulating, that we could talk about ideas and talk about things, where would I be today? Not that I'm not happy with where I am, don't get me
Yeah,
wrong. It's just, I think it's important that we teach people that you are the product of your environment and who you surround yourself with. And I truly believe that.
that is awesome. That is awesome. Surround yourself with people that lift you up as opposed to pull you down.
Amen. Yes.
Excellent, excellent. So, what fact about Greg would people be surprised to learn about you?
So I actually have three things.
Okay.
First, I love video games. I started my college education playing games all night long, every day. And then I'd go to class like 2 o'clock in the afternoon because I'd sleep until like noon
Uh,
and try to get there just in time. So that was my life back then. I have completely transformed that experience now. I still play video games, don't get me wrong, but it's not as major of a part of my life as it used to be when I was in college. The second thing is I started my career as a photographer. I wanted to be a photographer and an advertising photographer. I love doing pictures of manipulation or recruiting people because of a certain image. And so I started taking classes, and that's when I realized that photography, it's more of a hobby than it is a career. I wanted to go into marketing, and I became a marketing guy, but I still have that photography bug in me. And so when I travel, I do like to take a lot of pictures myself. I don't sell them, I don't publish them. It's just from my own memory and for myself. And then the third thing that you may not know, it's not so private anymore, but I was just named 40 under 40 in the Pittsburgh Magazine in November of 2023. And that was probably one of the greatest honors of my life, and really excited about that.
that is awesome. I actually didn't know that last one. Uh, so that is awesome, and congratulations for that honor to be recognized by peers in your community uh, as someone that's kind of a mover and shaker in your community. That is awesome. That is awesome.
Thank you. Yes. It's been a journey. And I think for me, it's something that I've always wanted to do, is to make the world a better place. And whenever I see something that needs to be improved, I focus my energy in that, because if it's something that my skill fits, then that's what I want to do. That's really always been my passion.
And you're succeeding at it. Friend of mine
Thank you.
once told me trying is a mild form of failure, so you're succeeding. Um, so
Yes.
excellent. So
Good. That's a very good point.
what's your go-to tactic? And I'm assuming it's going to be video games, but what's your go-to tactic for unwinding after a stressful day?
Well, you've touched on one tactic, but I'll give you actually another one that I use. So, what video games I play when I really just need to forget everything. Now, this
Uh-huh.
might seem counterproductive, to let you know, but actually, I like to read and professional development books. I like to do researching on market trends. I actually enjoy looking at how companies are doing and trying to decide which companies I should invest in. I like to kind of play in the stock market, invest. I really enjoy that for two reasons. One, it's strategic, and I love figuring out the strategy behind it and where the world is going. What are those trends? And it also helps me to look at our current society and see what's important to our society members. And it's easy thinking for me. When I'm trying to relax, that's actually something that's easy for me. Also, when the weather is great, I like to kick back, start a fire, I have a bonfire in the back of my yard, and just enjoy nature. Like I had mentioned before, I am an avid backpacker and hiker. I love camping. I love just going out into nature. So nature is my element, and it is my number one form of therapy.
I love that. I love that. Disconnect to reconnect. Yep.
Yep.
Excellent. So if someone wants to pick your brain a little bit, where are there conferences or different events that you're attending, or generally want to just pick your brain about CSD, or how do we engage with CSD? I know someone reaches out to me, I'm going to be putting them directly in contact with you. But what are some other ways that people can connect with you? Oh, we may have frozen.
Okay, sorry. We'll have to cut that part out.
So you know what? It's part of being authentic. It's all good.
So, in general, I'm not hard to find. I am very active on LinkedIn. I have Instagram. I have a lot of blog posts and articles that I tend to share via LinkedIn. I welcome everyone to check them out. I love writing blog posts. It's kind of one of my favorite things to do. I think a lot of people enjoy my style, and I hope other people will find that to be true. I can also be reached at G Pollock, Pollock, at csd.org. I tend to go to a lot of accessibility related conferences as well as customer service conferences, mainly because we're trying to spread awareness about accessibility and the customer experience that nobody really has the visibility into. I enjoy what we're doing, and I spend a lot of time at accessibility conferences. Disability In, CSUN, their Accessible Technology Conference, M-Enabling, just to name a few. And I think, Mark, you and I actually met at the Customer Contact Week, and you've helped me to continue to be involved with that. There's so many amazing people in the customer care community that also have that desire to make this experience better for their customers. So finding people with common missions is what my goal is.
That is awesome. And I love networking. I am so glad, Greg, you and I were introduced to one another, because I think that uh, there's folks in my network that I would love to introduce you to, and see if we can help you grow your business.
I would love that. I would love that. Yeah.
And oh, go ahead.
It's been a pleasure to meet people like you, and I look forward to meeting more people with the same passion.
And outside of the professional aspect, I just enjoy having conversations with you. So thank you very much for taking time to be a guest on Coffee Talk with Brohawk.
Sorry, I froze again. But thank you so much, Mark. It has been a pleasure to be a part of this. And I'm so glad that we were able to have this coffee talk. And these kinds of topics are not talked about enough. So thank you for giving a platform for them.
My pleasure. And anytime you want to come back on as a guest, I'd love to have you.
I appreciate that, Mark. Thank you.
Excellent. So if you like today's episode, um, please feel free to go ahead and share, comment, um, reach back out to me, and I can definitely uh, introduce you to Greg, do a virtual introduction with you, or you can reach out to him on your own too. Just mention that you saw him on Coffee Talk with Brohawk, and just a conversation with Greg is is an amazing experience. So, Greg, thank you very much. Sharon, thank you very much. And
Yes. Thank you, Mark.
we'll talk to everybody again soon.
Yes. Thank you.